Welcome, everybody, to another Java with Jim, bright and sunny Thursday morning. Thanks for coming. Today, we're going to talk about dealing with unpredictable markets and specifically inflationary markets. So you got costs going up, both material costs as well as labor costs going up. And if you're not doing anything, your prices are remaining the same, and you just are going to get caught in the squeeze. Margin is going to shrink, profit is going to shrink. And, this is obviously a long-term problem for survivability. So this is literally a survival question. This is not, in the short term, it's a make less money question. In the long term, it's a survival question, particularly if inflation carries on at this rate, or heaven forbid, it increases to the rates we saw in the early 80s, where it was double-digit inflation for extended periods of time. No model, no matter how good your model is, you cannot withstand that without making moves. So I'm going to say that there really is no choice here but to make moves on both the cost side and on the price side. Because of the worker shortage, the returns will shift somewhat from returns going to capital to returns going to labor. If you think about it from a classical economic point of view, you got capital and labor. Right now, labor gets one rate of return, or capital gets one rate of return, labor gets another. The view is that this low inflation rate has suppressed the rate of return to labor. And with the shortage of labor and the inflationary environment, more of the returns are going to go to labor. The cool thing about inflation, and everybody's like, what the heck could possibly be cool about inflation, is it's everybody experiences it. So you are at zero. There is no competitive disadvantage in an inflationary environment. Everybody, it's like the rain. Everybody gets rained on. It is what it is. Once in a while, I'll talk to a CEO and I go, what's your number one point of constraint? They go, the president. By the way, it doesn't matter which administration, it's the president, right? I go, okay, great. What are you going to do about it? And they go, I don't know. I said, then it's not a point of constraint. If you can't do anything about it, it's an environmental and it's irrelevant, except that you need to understand it. But all of your competitors are experiencing it. There's no relative problem with inflation. So whether you're labor dominated or material dominated as a business, costs are going up, period. So with regard to price increases, we've talked about the leverage in price increases. If I could take a 10% price increase with, let's say, not zero cost increase, which you're not going to have, you make 10% more profit. Now, most companies making a 10% profit is pretty good. A 10% price increase can double your organizational profit. Now, in this case, you're probably going to end up spending part of that increase on increased labor costs. If you just match inflation for your employees, you're at 7%. So your labor costs are going up 7%, and you're not actually giving them any real money increase with a 7% raise. It's the same as they used to make, okay? Your material costs are likely to go up by similar numbers, 7, 8, maybe more interest rates. There's sort of two effects going there. There's the underlying cost structure, and then there's the scarcity problem that's occurring. That's a bit of a problem. But you're going to see price increases probably between labor and materials of 7 to 8%. Because their labor's going up 7%, and it's a chain, right? So if you're not thinking about 7, 8, 10% price increases, you're going to go backwards. In other words, your costs are going to go up by more than your prices are going up, and you're going to squeeze your margins. The elasticity demand, as I said, is overestimated all the time, and particularly by your sales manager, by the way. So when you tell that person you're taking a price increase, they're going to go, oh my God, we're going to lose all our customers. We can't possibly do that. And that's just not true. So take the price increase, stick with it. By the way, even if you bump up 7 or 8%, you probably won't yield all of that. There'll be a few special situations that you have to modify that price just a little bit, but go for a bigger number and then work back from there and stick to it. I used to have a rule of thumb. If my sales force wasn't whining about my price increases, I didn't go high enough. Look at both sides. Do I have pricing power with my customers? Do they have a lot of options for suppliers like me? Or am I kind of the only game in town, or one of a couple? Or are there 100 people that can do what I do pretty much equivalently? In that case, you don't have pricing power. If it's a limited set, you've got pricing power. Same thing, lots of customers, pricing power, few customers, limited pricing power. But a low cost product, it's time to have one. And so I remember I was around in the 80s, and econo was a very popular first, prefix in front of the name of your product, right? So, we've got Econo mold or Econo this or Econo board or Econo. And the whole idea was I was trying to position a low cost offer. Over the last few years, they've been generally image appeals, performance appeals, speed appeals, but they haven't been as much economic appeals in your promotion to customers. And so you may want to think more about my product saves you money because, my product is economic because, and shifting some of your appeals in that direction. It's probably already true. You just haven't been talking about it very much, right? So, if I have a way of getting something done and it's fairly automated, and historically it would have required or does require people if you don't use my product, you could say, look, we help you save money because you don't need as many people doing that function. They can do another function for you instead, or maybe not be with you. So economic appeals and economic products, both, right? So one is I need to redesign the product. The second is I just need to shift my marketing in a direction towards an economic appeal. That's going to be a big deal as we move forward. And you'll see more and more of that in digital and print and all kinds of advertising, this economic appeals as people wallets. So go take a mortgage on your house, go take mortgages on your equipment. Obviously don't want to make them so high that you can't handle them. And then pay back that debt with inflated dollars. Assets that make money are the assets you want to own in an inflationary environment. The people that get killed by inflation are people that are cash flow oriented, not asset oriented. If it's floating debt, turn it into fixed debt. All right. So if you've got a, LIBOR plus 1.5, go figure out if you can make that fixed debt. Now your bank may refuse because they know this is coming. And if you can't, you're wamboozled. There's not much you can do. But if you can flip it to non-variable debt, that is a big winning strategy. So cost out projects, that means automation, where there's humans involved, automated, where there's non-value added, eliminated. I'll talk about that in a minute. So cost out projects in your workflow and in the way you deliver to your clients need to be taken on. That I talked about low cost product. So think about your product roadmap. On your product roadmap needs to be, I want to see an econo product on everybody's roadmap. Now, you may or may not ever sell it, but you should have it just in case you do need to sell it. So put an econo product on the roadmap and do the development now so it's in place. So box out room and retain your strategic. Don't think about, well, we'll toss that strategic initiative overboard and, there we go. Now, I will say I would take a sharper pencil to my strategic. So there are items that you might have been doing that are a little bit of a flyer and, hey, let's give it a try. Some of those may have to go for some more higher probability initiatives. I'm kind of okay with that, but don't get rid of them entirely. So box out, make room, maintain your strategic. As labor costs go up and labor availability goes down, automation is going to make a lot more sense for you. The equation is going to shift. And so you're going to want to look at more aggressively at automating things that reduce your dependence on human factors. Okay. And I'm not telling you to get rid of people, although I'm going to get to that in a minute. Just less people needed to continue growing the business is the first element. So look at automation if you've not. If you can't get overt price increases, look to get prices pegged to inflation. Think agility, think speed, as opposed to thinking forecasting. So how do you do that? Well, the first is going all the way back to how you design your product and your service. And the idea here is you design it for mass customization. So you design it to be rapidly modified and modified at the very end of production. So when I was doing electronics, we had, a big chunk of the electronics were the same. And then there were a few little boards that we added on, daughter boards, that gave it its characteristic. We put it in a different case based on what it was, but it was about 85% the same product. And then about 15% made it different. And that's how it got sold into the market. But we didn't just happen onto that. Like the original product before I got involved was not designed like that. Every product was a unique product. And so when we were making A, we could only make A. When we were making B, we could only make B, C, so forth. And what we turned that into is it's A until we're almost ready to ship it. And so when we had changes in forecast, when customers change demand or we're moving this one in or pulling that one out, all we did is slap in some different daughter boards, put it in a different case, out the door it went.